In this video, I'm going to tell you why movies are better than games, why they tell better stories, why gameplay mechanics get in the way of good stories, why this isn't as good as this, and this isn't as good as this, why action games are gaming's only shot at being better. Games can't tell good stories about war, or relationships, or God. Disagree with me? Watch until the end and tell me otherwise. Because I've been playing Yakuza Kiwami recently, and it's a weird game. It's a story-focused game, told sometimes like a movie, and at other times more like a book or visual novel. Then, in between that story is a little open world with a bunch of minigames. Street fights, batting cages, billiards, and karaoke. And upon completing its story, I thought back to the video I made about Hellblade 2, and how similar it is to a film like The Northman, but how it falls short when it comes to having the same impact. And I felt that way with Yakuza 2, because recently I've also watched the streaming series Tokyo Vice, which also focuses on the politics of Yakuza and the culture of Japan's underbelly. And despite Yakuza Kiwami's dedication to story, it doesn't come anywhere close to being as impactful. I tried my best to work out why that is. Part of it is pacing. There are roughly 4 or 5 characters in Tokyo Vice that share the spotlight, each episode extending your investment in them slightly further. So when there is a death, that hits hard. There's shock and sadness and an eagerness to see if in the next episode there will be retaliation. But when similar circumstances occur in Yakuza, I couldn't care less. Especially in cases where a character dies, and I've had no interactions with them in the last 10 hours. There's zero emotional investment when my mentor dies, when my former subordinate or my friend dies, because I've been busy for the last 2 hours doing this. And this lack of narrative oomph is intensified by the constant suspension of disbelief I had to carry while playing Yakuza. There is diversity in mood within Tokyo Vice. Moments where characters sing Backstreet Boys together. And then commit heinous murders. But there's still a sense of reality, because the world does contain dualities between horror and humor. But then in Yakuza, you have moments where a single bullet fatally kills one man, and then another man can be stabbed, shot, and beaten countless times. And he just laughs, walks it off, and says, "See you tomorrow." It doesn't really make sense. It feels like a comedy and a serious drama are playing out at the same time and fighting for dominance. But you understand that this game is this way because its gameplay requires changes in tone. So you get to a point where you ask yourself, based purely on their mechanical makeup and design, can games as a medium ever tell stories more effectively than their film counterparts? Or even at the same level? So I chose 6 games and put them to the test. I started with the obvious. Can a video game tell an action story as good as a film? Take something like Hotline Miami. Its story is simple. You get phone calls from a mysterious number each night, and then go and massacre a bunch of people. You're essentially a hitman. Now compare that to something like Boy Kills World. Both have basic premises with a twist at the end, but the focus is on the action. In Hotline Miami's case, I think it surpasses Boy Kills World, Because when a story's main goal is the spectacle of fun violence, it's always more satisfying being the one to play out those action scenes and feel that sense of flow and proficiency. But what about other kinds of spectacle? Like the spectacle of street races and high-speed set pieces. Think Fast and Furious. And then compare that to something like Need for Speed Heat. Now they both nail the swagger of the drift scene, they both have intense high-speed pursuits between illegal drivers and cops, and they both center their stories around family and the bonds of loyalty that can be built through racing. Now there is fun to be had driving through the streets, dodging traffic and drifting corners in Need for Speed, but mechanically there is still plenty that gets in the way. As Fast and Furious continues to up the stakes as the series progresses, and its main characters become more proficient drivers, Need for Speed doesn't know how to do the same. No matter what upgrades you buy, or how fast your car's top speed is, the rubber banding with the cops during pursuits is crazy. At a certain heat level, it feels like there is nothing you can do to improve. No vehicle or talent level that surpasses the AI of the police. So you don't feel like the best driver in town, who can escape the impossible like Brian O'Connor or Dominic Toretto. It feels unfair. A poor design decision that holds back that narrative sentiment of being the best. Even when you can outrace every other driver on the road by a mile, you can't outrace the cops.
Palm City Island. UFL now heading to Palm City Island.
Just like Yakuza, the space between cutscenes is too wide as well. Because this is a game focused on driving, you never get to see the tension and trust built between characters, where you can have love interests or loss. Now that's not to say Fast and Furious doesn't falter too. All the movies that follow Tokyo Drift fall off a cliff quality-wise, trading a grounded but charismatic world for increasingly eye-rollingly ridiculous scenarios that just end up bland. If you're looking for this kind of mindless content, I'd honestly recommend just going and playing Makeway. But when judging Need for Speed against the heart of the first three films, when it comes to the better story told, I must choose the Fast and Furious franchise.
You'll always be with me. And you'll always be my brother.
How can we not talk about family when family's all that we got? Everything I would do, you were standing there by my side. And now you gon' be there for the last ride. How can we not talk about family when family's all that we got? Everything I would do, you were standing there by my side. And now you gon' be with me for the last ride.
So, what about something with a deeper theme? Something like Princess Mononoke, which tells a story about the relationship between man's endless pursuit of industrialization at the cost of nature and spirituality. Can video games tell a story that rivals Miyazaki's depiction of the old world's destruction? Maybe you could compare it to something like Submerged Hidden Depths or Wavetale? Both depict apocalyptic worlds ravaged by global warming inspired sources, worlds flooded and then poisoned by black goo. They are both engaging video games, but have little really to say. We don't see the same level of conflict between modernization and environmental concern like we do in Princess Mononoke. Instead, global warming, pollution, and older generations not thinking about how their actions will impact those who come after is just used as a way to dress the setting and enemies in a certain aesthetic. So, although fun, neither of these games tell a better story. Okay, what about war? Many of the biggest games are set during wars, putting you in the boots of a soldier, asking you to survive and mow down Nazis or terrorists. So, can a game depict a story of a historical moment like World War II with more narrative class than a film or television? Battlefield 5's episodic stories come close, each depicting a different front of the war from a different nation's perspective. The weight, protection, and strength of the tanks in the mission The Last Tiger matches those in the film Fury, as does its depiction of those tanks' crews and the loyalty and disillusion they felt. The Nordley's mission captures some of the tactical espionage and guerrilla warfare of the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. Tirailleur, I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right, however, doesn't really excel in the depiction of frontline warfare in the same way Band of Brothers does. And again, it's because mechanics get in the way. In Band of Brothers, there's this real sense that anyone could die at any moment. A character's arc is cut short by a single bullet. But you don't feel that in Battlefield 5. Soldiers attack around you, but as the player you not only can take multiple rounds to the chest and shrug it off, because the realistic lethality of a bullet would shudder the momentum of gameplay to a halt, but you're also expected to take down most of the enemy forces yourself. In real warfare, a soldier might take down a couple of enemy infantry on their lonesome, but in Battlefield 5, I'm expected to take down multiple tanks, turrets, and barracks, while the rest of my company act as a set dressing. On top of that, developer DICE doesn't want to keep you out of the action for too long. You never get moments like episode 6 of Band of Brothers, Bastogne. In that episode, the protagonist, Eugene Doc Rowe, never fires a single round. The episode focuses on the feelings of helplessness that the frontline doctors and medics felt, running from one man about to lose his life to the next, saving some but losing many, wondering if they can carry on, going numb over time. It's incredibly powerful storytelling that, due to its lack of shooting, would never make its way into a Battlefield 5 campaign. And so, despite its efforts, its solid writing, and impressive visuals, Battlefield 5 loses this round to Band of Brothers. Okay, so what about something that touches on religious or spiritual ideas? Well, to be honest, it's hard to find much fiction in either medium that tackles these themes with much impressiveness. You have movies like Legion or TV series like Good Omens that center their stories around angels, demons, and God, but they often don't have much to say. They tackle stories about Armageddon and the Antichrist, but more so with humor, levity, or horror. Nothing too deep. You could maybe look to something more experimental like Devilman Crybaby. That delves deeper into sins like lust, greed, envy, and prejudice. I suppose perhaps that could be a worthy comparison. But what games can I compare that to? The only thing that comes to mind is Neon White. A fast-paced, first-person shooter set in heaven, where sinners fight for their freedom. It's a cool premise, and the speedy action platforming rivals the speedy action fight scenes of Devilman. But its story is far shallower. There is so little done to flesh out the characters or core plot, let alone convey the deeper message. Without trying to be insulting, Neon White's writing almost feels immature, written by a high school student. Because it feels like an afterthought. The gameplay is solid, that's the focus, that's what deserves your attention. The story is just there as well. So no, video games lose on this front too. By this point, it felt like an open and shut case. I love video games. I love how stories are told in video games. But unless it's action orientated, anything with a deeper message seems best served in film and television. At least that's what I thought, until I played Citizen Sleeper. Citizen Sleeper is an incredibly unique game. A game that feels like a novel. Its rich story, characters, and setting lavishly described through text. Dice rolls determining your fate and what story arcs you manage to see through to their conclusion. Like a game of Dungeons and Dragons, with classes and perks that will set you up for better success at different jobs or when scavenging for food. Its story is not linear. A dozen short tales all playing out simultaneously, all coming together to craft a narrative of survival in the shadow of corporate dehumanization. Many people, all fighting for what they have on this single space station. And it's the first game I played since Hotline Miami where the mechanics felt additive to the emotional resonance of the story, rather than a detractor. Although there are many stories and actions on the go at once, the number of dice you have determines how many of these tasks you can make progress towards each day, and the number of dice you have is affected by your health bar, so there is a sense of time and urgency added into the world. And if trying to complete a task in an area that your perks don't align with, there is a higher chance an outcome will fail and that its connected story thread might turn out negatively. So, there is strategy demanded of the player that reflects the strategy and intelligence of the protagonist you play as. It's a complex and unique game that threatened to sway my opinion on the topic of this whole video, so I sought out a rival to compare it to. Citizen Sleeper was developed by a one-person development studio called Jump Over the Age. The story of the game was influenced by Gareth Martin's experience as a non-binary person and by their struggles to make ends meet in the gig economy, working for companies like Uber and learning to exist within a capitalist society as someone not necessarily reaping all its rewards. So, it seemed obvious to compare Citizen Sleeper to a series like Super Pumped: The Battle for Uber, which depicts Uber's rise from plucky startup to tech industry monolith. Super Pumped focuses mostly on Uber's CEO Travis Kalanick, portraying a truly detestable villain who built his billions on greed, apathy, and ego. Super Pumped betrays the same ideas of capitalism as Citizen Sleeper, but from a different angle. Where Super Pumped focuses on the malice and lack of humanity at the top, and the consumer's uncomfortable role in rewarding that, Citizen Sleeper focuses on the survival and ownership over one's life, or the lack of, that exists for those at the bottom. They are both interesting stories, but Citizen Sleeper succeeds in telling its story more, through characters you come to care for, a tale more hopeful, and through innovative mechanical choices that draw you in.
Wake up, Sleeper. You have no idea what's coming.
But I wasn't ready to accept that answer, so I looked for another competitor to prove my point that movies and television tell better stories than games. I found Scavengers Reign, because on the flip side, Citizen Sleeper also tells a story of sentience, of evolution, of being something that is hard to define. Much like Citizen Sleeper's mechanics, Scavengers Reign's animation and world building of an alien ecosystem through visual storytelling feels cutting edge and one of a kind. Its exploration of survival through a myriad of perspectives is also comparable. The arc of one character, Levi, is particularly like that of Citizen Sleeper's player character. Levi is a support robot, infected upon crash landing by an alien fungus. Initially viewed as a concern for his human companion, this merging of two forms of intelligence allows Levi's sense of self to expand, to evolve, to the point that Levi, an artificial being, is reborn and produces organic offspring and can communicate with this foreign ecosystem. It's deep and far more spiritual than anything in Good Omens, Legion, or Neon White. And without spoiling too much, is very similar to a specific portion of Citizen Sleeper. Yet I find myself unable to decide which is better, Scavengers Reign or Citizen Sleeper. They are both innovative, they are both thrilling and emotional, they are both excellent. And contrary to my initial belief, outside of the realm of action, it is Citizen Sleeper's mechanics that allow it to be Scavengers Reign's equal. So perhaps I was wrong. Mechanics and gameplay can be a hindrance to storytelling, but they can also accentuate it. Deep themes aren't exclusive to older passive mediums. Perhaps it's just that film and television have had longer to fine-tune the tools at their disposal. There have been more iterations to build upon. Perhaps with time, games might even surpass these other mediums. They just need space to grow, time to try, time to evolve into what they are capable of being. Isn't that exciting? To be proven wrong? To have a chance at seeing what is possible?